Where'll you be going?
Texas?
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Go on, make it happen.
And now here's Steve and Michelle.
Welcome to Mallet and Michelle. I am fresh off baby snuggles and grandma duty, and Steve is always looking for the nearest heater, no matter the time of the year. I am Lovey Michelle Lewis, and this is Shivering Steve Mallet.
It's cold, and it's going to get colder.
I don't like it.
I don't know if this is an age thing I'm going through, but damn, I am always cold. Doesn't matter what I'm wearing.
I don't like it.
Well, welcome to the show, everybody. We want to thank our wonderful sponsors who we could not do the show without. Jovi Belterra, a 55-plus apartment community in Belterra.
Nomic Power Solutions.
South Star Bank.
And Mallet Integrity Team Real Estate.
Thank you to all our sponsors. Our guest today, the Honorable Jason Isaac, former state rep, and now the CEO for the American Energy Institute.
He was a lot of fun to listen to.
Yeah, we've already recorded him. He's a great guy, very, very knowledgeable about all kinds of things, but especially about American energy.
Yeah, I've known Jason a long time, and I just thought it was a lot of fun to be able to pick his brain a little bit, and to hear his professional side, his professional voice.
Yeah,
for sure.
Carrie is our state rep now. His wife Carrie is our state rep now, but we're going to get her on one day too.
There you go. Well,
I have a quick story for all of you bicycle riders that ride electric bicycles.
Oh,
did you know that was a thing?
Yeah, my son Tate has an electric bicycle in Oregon.
Oh, okay. Well, If he ever comes here and brings it, he cannot ride it in Dripping Springs Ranch Park or Charo Park now.
Oh, really?
Charo
Why is
Ranch
that?
Park. The city council outlawed him in those two parks. They said it was too crowded and people on electric bikes are dangerous on those twisty, windy trails.
Wait, here in Dripping
Springs Ranch Park and Charo Ranch Park, you cannot ride an electric bicycle.
There's that
anymore.
many people that have them?
It's become a big thing. It's like if you don't really want to get any exercise, you go get an electric bike.
Well, I think that's strange that they would outlaw any type of.
I think they've had some incidents where people have gotten hurt over there. Because those electric bikes can go like 20 miles an hour, and if you're out there tooling along on a little trail and somebody comes around a corner, they can take you out. You can still ride them at Founders Park, but your speed shouldn't be no more than 10 miles an hour.
I mean, I'm all for following the rules and stuff, but what are they going to do? Trace you down on their bicycle?
I don't know. I guess they'll give you a ticket. I don't know. That's a good question.
The bicycle police are going to come after you?
The bicycle police will come and get you. So, hey, you mentioned it in your intro. You have had a huge life change in this last week.
Yes. My precious, precious little princess Navy Tate was born February 10th at 3:45 in the afternoon after a long laboring mama.
Yeah.
Poor Kendall, but she came out smashingly. I love it. And I came off cooking and cleaning and feeding and changing diapers, and I took care of the dogs, and I went grocery shopping. But more than anything, it was very, very humbling, but it honestly, it healed a part of me that I never thought could have ever been healed.
Really?
It was really cool. My mom's been gone 20 years. And so my kids, for the most part, grew up without a grandparents, except Todd's mom. She's still alive, but she's wasn't that involved like my grandmother or my mother was. And it was really cool. It was really cool to be able to pass that down, especially because she's a girl and I'm a girl and my daughter's a girl, and to kind of see that.
It wouldn't make any difference if it was a boy, but she is cute. Little Navy is cute. She came out really nice. She came out
a full head of hair.
Yeah.
She came out looking like I did.
I think I won that bet. I think you were saying you thought she was going to be bald.
No, I thought she was going to have hair. I think Kendall.
Because I said hair.
Yeah, well, she looks like Kendall when she was a baby, and she looks like myself when she was a baby. But there was a picture that Kendall took of me holding her, and for the first time ever in my entire life, I saw my mom in that picture. It kind of actually startled me a little bit because it was weird. It was like my mom was being channeled in there. But more than anything, it's really neat. I guess if you are a parent of a sassy 15, 16, 17-year-old that thinks they know it all, I'm here to testify and say that they can come out the other side. She has an amazing husband, and it is just such a blessing to be able to see what a wonderful mama she is.
It's very cool.
It really is. And I think there was couple of things that really sat with me. The first one was how much first, Kendall has her own way of doing things, and I respect that 100%.
You got to let them do that.
Yeah, and I told her, I said, you're going to figure it out. And then the second one is how much she trusts me with Navy.
Aww.
And so
Of course she does.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's her first baby. It's her first child.
Still,
and
of course
so
she does.
and all the rules, everything's different now, Steve.
Yeah.
Like everything that you and I
because
did.
TikTok said so,
Yeah.
Michelle.
Everything that you and I think we did right. But let me tell you, day two, day three, I don't know, time warp. I kind of, through sleep and everything.
Yeah, I'm sure it just all blended together.
The deal was I was sleeping on the couch, and then that night I slept in the upstairs bedroom, and I said, just come get me when you need me. 3:00 in the morning. Knock on the door. And I'm like startled out of sleep.
Yeah.
And I see Jacob there holding Navy, and he has his arms outstretched, and he goes, please take her.
She won't stop crying.
Yeah.
Was she crying?
She was fussy.
Oh.
I took her, I changed her, and she laid in bed with me for 4 hours.
Oh,
So she loved Navy. Loved her
that's
mamas.
so cool.
Yeah, and so we just hung out and we TikToked. I used her toe as to scroll through TikTok, but I was kidding.
You're starting her out young. That's actually a great segue to my story. Are you done with that?
I
one?
am.
Yeah.
I
So
am.
Now that you're a new grandma, you have to keep up on all the latest child lingo, which is, believe it or not, is changing faster than ever before because of social media.
Well, I found out that she will be Gen Beta.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know
that's
that.
her. So I'm Gen X. You're Boomer. Gen
Yeah.
Beta. By the way, happy belated birthday. Your birthday was
yes,
Friday.
thank
so.
you. Yeah, it was a good one. 62, and I'm just except for
What?
being cold, I
62?
don't feel too bad. So there's a bunch of new lingo coming out, and thanks to social media, is you put something on TikTok, it goes viral. You're using some new word, and then all of a sudden, all the kids are using it. Well, parents are reporting that they're having a really hard time keeping up with all the new ones, and they come and go. It's not like the old days,
Yeah.
like cool. How long was cool around for? Like 10 years.
It's not cool anymore.
It's not cool anymore. Well, another one that's not cool anymore that was cool for, I guess, 5 or 6 years was bruh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I
one's
hated
dead.
that one.
So don't use bruh anymore. So not that you ever did.
Never used it.
Okay, here's a couple that have been throwing parents.
Okay.
And,
Let me see if I've
kinda
heard any of
sideways.
them.
Mewing.
Yeah, I've heard of mewing.
Do you know what it is?
No, I don't know what mewing is, but I have heard of
It's
it.
when you look in a mirror and you make a mewing noise, like mew, like that. It's
Well-
supposed to enhance your jawline.
Mew.
Like it's probably the new version of duck lips. Remember duck lips from like 5 years ago when everybody's taking a picture?
Well,
Their
that's
duck
kind of
lip?
where I was. Navy does duck lips when she takes a picture,
Well,
but
of course she does.
that's where when you say T-mew, that's where
T-mew,
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 mew.
mew. It's enhancing my jawline. How about Giga Chad?
No.
So Chad used to be a word for a gentleman that was really hot.
Yeah, like a bruh.
Yeah, like a hot bruh. Giga Chad is an exceptionally
Oh,
handsome
okay,
man.
okay.
So,
Giga Chad.
yeah, like all the examples that I saw online were all AI generated. None of them were real. Like muscles everywhere on top of muscles. And anyway, so that's Giga Chad.
Disgusting. Who likes to look at that?
So I saw this one and I thought, oh, I know what that is. Baddie.
Well, I mean, you're a baddie,
Like,
right?
what does it mean though?
I mean, you're
Like a bad guy?
no, like you're cool. I mean,
See, when I read it, I thought baddie, like, oh, that's a criminal or ne'er-do-well. It actually means the female version of a Giga Chad.
oh,
Like a woman that's really hot
okay,
is a baddie.
okay.
How about Betamaxing?
No,
Have you ever heard of that?
I mean, no, I haven't.
That's when
I've
we're
heard
in
of
a
those
group.
words, but I've never heard of them put
you
together.
have seen this in action, actually.
Okay.
We're in a group of people, and there's one person that is saying negative things about you to make themselves look better.
Oh,
That's Betamaxing.
oh, then I fight them later.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
and you always win.
Yeah.
So how about Sigma and Omega?
I I have heard of that. That's been used on TikTok a lot. Aside from the fraternity sororities,
No, this
but
is
it's like the
Omega is you're lower than cool, like the lowest cool you can be, and Sigma is when you think you're the best.
Yeah, I've heard it. That's probably in the context I've heard it in.
So for you as grandma, when Navy comes over and talks to you, she'll say things to you, and you'll have to wonder: is she complimenting you or making fun of you?
She's always going to be complimenting me because I'm going to be the favorite grandmother. I have determined.
She might call you a baddie and mean it the other way.
No, she's going to let me.
You're being baddie.
She's not going to talk for 2 more years, and so I have enough time to. All of this stuff will change, anyways. So
yeah, by the time she's on social media, there'll be a whole new AI generated language that we'll all have to get used to.
You know what's funny? Okay, the whole conversation about like grandparents' names. So Jacob's mom, we were like, "Oh, hello, grandma," and we're like, "What's your grandma name?" She goes, "I don't want to be grandma." I'm like, "Well, you have to have a name," and she said, "Well, it doesn't matter. She's going to pick my name out for you, anyways." And Kendall and I were of the argument: you have to pick a name in order for them to butcher the name.
Otherwise, you may get a terrible name.
Yeah,
you want to pick one out before they get to it. Yeah.
Kendall picked my name. She picked Lovey.
Lovey.
So
I think that's a great one.
Lovey. It's Lovey-dovey and Navy Bean. So
Navy Bean.
Navy Bean.
Yeah, she'll like that until she's about 7.
Or,
Don't call me that anymore.
That's okay. That's okay. Whatever. Man, a lot happened while I was gone.
Yeah, you weren't kidding.
Dude, I felt like I was in a time warp when we were at the hospital or being home. We're like, what day is it? You know, I totally forgot about all of that. You just suddenly I became a hockey fan too. I never knew I was going to be a hockey fan either. You know, you heard about that whole.
I just saw an Instagram post, so I don't know exactly what happened.
So the America's team was playing against Canada,
right.
And when they played our national anthem, they all booed. And they were saying horrible, despicable things about America, and I guess they're all pissed off about the tariffs and whatever. And the USA totally kicked their butts, and so whatever.
Well, I heard kick their butts in the game, but also kick their butts. And there were a lot of fights.
There were a lot of fights. There was a lot of stuff. So whatever. But on that subject, this whole DOGE thing that's going on, I'm just
fascinating, hasn't it?
Well, it's fascinating and it's disgusting, and I find myself living in a state of like insane anger over all of the waste that has been going on. Just total insane anger. And I know some of these probably since I did my research last week before I left. And so some of them have been kind of adjusted.
There's been a lot unearthed in the
last week. A lot has
week.
happened. But these are some of the funniest ones that I found at the time I did this access or research. And what I thought was like really funny is like, why are people so mad at Elon and his autistic superheroes about finding all of this waste? I don't understand. But I mean, you have autism in your family. I have autism in my family, and I think it's
there's a reason for it. There's a whole system set up to support the
money laundering.
It is basically money laundering. There's a whole system set up where they pay money to people who then donate to the parties that they want to keep in power. And so they use government money. They say they're not, but they employ people with similar political beliefs who will support projects that they want to be involved in. So the money just keeps that party in power.
It's like a
giant scam.
It's a giant government circle jerk is what it is.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Well, I've watched my brother for years fight with the VA. You and I are at some point we're going to, hopefully there'll be money for Social Security. We watched the North Carolina floods and the California fires and the Hawaiian fires. And so here's what they're spending your money on. So far, I saw that they were spending $3 million to see how fast a shrimp can run on a treadmill.
Is that true?
Yes, it is. Okay, $1.4 million went to the National Bubble Wrap Stress Relief Program. I volunteer for that one.
Yeah.
So $2.5 million went for electric vehicles in Vietnam. Okay. $6 million went for Egyptian tourism. I don't know. This one, I was like, this one made me scratch my head. $20 million went for the Sesame Street programs in Iraq.
I don't get it. What does that do maybe somebody's arguing that promotes American values in Iraq. I don't know.
I don't know, but $500,000 to see if selfies will make you happy. I mean, I would do it for 100,000 at least. And $2.3 million for an balloon animal training academy. Yes, true. So we are
That's
taxed on what we earn,
That's
we are
ridiculous.
taxed on what we buy, and we are taxed on what we own.
Yep.
And this is insanity. And I'm sorry, but if you're ticked off about anyone finding waste in our government, then maybe eyes need to be on you, because the people that are screaming are the ones that are probably guilty.
There's the whole thing really drives me nuts. What's being uncovered is, like you said, it's very unsettling. The thought that we send all this money up there to Washington and they spend it this way. There are, our country needs a national defense. There's some things that our government
Absolutely.
does and does fairly well. There's some things our country is just blowing money on, they're just giving it out in thick wads to whoever just
I don't know
asks
if you
for it.
saw the speech yesterday, or was it yesterday or day before yesterday, that J.D. Vance did in Europe. And they are ticked. And so, I'm sorry, Germany, why are you mad that my tax dollars aren't going to, they have more eyes on it? Let's say that we're not turning the faucet completely off, right?
Well,
but we are watching. More eyes are on this.
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest ones for me is can't remember, some billions of dollars that went to Ukraine that nobody can account for.
Well,
you were talking, everything you talked about began with an M, for millions. There are billions of dollars. If you want to know how much $1 billion is, look at how big is $1 billion. If it shows you a stack of money, it's like pallets and pallets of money. $1 billion is so freaking much money. They can't account for it.
Well, I'm sure they can account for it.
And
because
I'll tell you what, if you don't tell the IRS about that $473 that your friend sent you on Venmo, they'll come after you. But God forbid they lose $1 billion.
Well, I hear Zelensky's wife is driving a really nice Mercedes, and they just bought a mansion in Miami. So maybe they need to look there.
I wish DOGE and Elon Musk all the best in finding out where all this abuse, fraud, and waste and abuse
Did
is.
you see his son X, in the White House in the Oval Office, picking his nose, and right on the Resolute desk, he was kind of
No way. That's good.
Get a little
It's
germ.
good. Bring some humanity to something like that. To the oligarchy that's been up there in Washington. So, weddings.
Oh.
You've had 3. I've got one coming up in April with Colton, which I'm excited about. Weddings getting more and more expensive, right?
Weddings are. And, it's funny because I knew you were going to talk about weddings today. And we had Jason Isaac on. And Carrie Isaac just filed HCR 58 and was redesignating Dripping Springs as the wedding capital of Texas.
That's great.
So that's really cool. I guess I didn't know that they had to redesignate. That was kind of
I think it's
confusing to me.
something that falls away if you don't do it. So.
Oh. Well, there you go.
Well, so I don't know what the average cost of a wedding is in Dripping Springs, but if you do a cheap one, it's what, $15,000, maybe 20 for a cheap one.
I spent $50 for Kindle.
Well, I know, so exactly, it makes my point. In Las Vegas, Taco Bell has a new wedding plan that they're offering at their. It's one of the
casinos
places on the. No, it's a Taco Bell on the Strip. So you get. It's a wedding package for guests that includes a Vegas Elvis impersonator.
Ooh, and Taco Bell?
Yes, Vegas showgirls and, of course, tacos. Takes place at the Taco Bell Cantina on the Strip. You can have up to 25 guests.
Uh-huh.
It comes with a taco 12-pack and Cinnabon Delights and alcohol at Taco Bell. I didn't even know they would do that. The bride can walk down the aisle with a bouquet of Taco Bell's signature mild and hot sauce packets.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
Which you don't get to keep. You got to give it back. I guess they reuse it. You can't keep the bouquet. It comes with some wedding swag, including just married teas and champagne, all for the very Vegas price of, I'm going to take a guess,
Per person or total?
Total.
I would say $1,000.
$777.
Oh,
777.
777.
Yep. Well, I don't know what can be more Vegas than that.
I think Kendall would have been mortified. Tate and Logan probably would have loved it.
You know what? I mean, okay, hear me out. $20,000 for a wedding.
I tried that.
No, but I'm saying,
I tried to give her $20,000 cash.
If you're out there and you're 25 years old, I'm not saying this to you, Colton. I wish we're gonna have a great wedding. But I mean, like, take that money and start your life off. There's so much you can do with that money.
I will give you $20,000, but you know what? Her wedding was beautiful.
It was beautiful.
And I get
all
it.
of your kids' weddings were beautiful. I get that. It's just so much money.
Yeah. You know how much I spent on my wedding? My wedding was maybe $2,000. Of course, in 1993. How much do you think your first wedding? How much do you think your in-laws spent on that wedding?
Gosh, it was probably $10,000.
And back then,
yeah, Holly and I spent $5,000. I mean, it probably wasn't $10,000. I don't know. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But Holly and I spent $5,000 on ours, and it certainly wasn't fancy by any measure.
no, and that was COVID. You was smack dab in the middle of COVID too.
Like right at the beginning of COVID. But I'm sure, you pay your $777 there at Taco Bell. Maybe if you give them an extra $50, they'll let you keep the hot sauce bouquet.
Maybe you were having your own super spreader event, weren't you?
Yeah, we did. There was a lot of people that were a little standoffish. They're like, yeah, we wish you the best, but we're not coming over there.
Can you imagine that conversation with Holly and like, hey, babe, we're going to have our wedding at Taco Bell, $777. Yeah.
I was thinking about, this is probably not good, but you having Taco Bell food at your wedding, and then what's your wedding night look like when you're sleeping with your bride?
Yeah, probably not.
It's like, I don't think that's going to be a nice honeymoon night.
No, probably. Maybe a smelly honeymoon.
That's not good. That's not a good way to kick off a marriage. But
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, hey, that was good. We kept it right on our time here. We got to get Jason Isaac in here.
Yeah.
Talk about the American Energy Institute. So let's take a little break, and we'll be right back with Jason Isaac.
Are you tired of being left in the dark when the power goes out? Say goodbye to blackouts with Nomic Power Solutions.
As your full-service Generac dealer, they offer individually designed backup power solutions.
From start to finish, they've got you covered.
Nomic Power Solutions, keeping you powered up.
Call or text 512-387-4232 or visit nomicpower.com. Follow on Instagram at Nomic Power for updates.
Nomic Power Solutions. Protect your home, protect your family, stay ready. Southstar Bank has remained true to its Texas roots for over 100 years. A commitment to the people and communities they serve, along with flexible financial solutions, allow their clients to shine. Mortgage loans, checking accounts, or complete business solutions. Southstar Bank is your financial partner. Southstar Bank, trusted by professionals, backed by tradition, built for Texas.
SouthstarBank.com. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender. NMLS 410624. Find your joy at Jovi Belterra. Life is better here. This vibrant 55 and up community is located in Dripping Springs, just right outside of Austin. 1 and 2 bedroom homes, resort style amenities, and just steps away from shops and restaurants. Forget the yard work. This is your time to relax, make new friends, and enjoy the life you've dreamed of. Find your joy at Jovi Belterra. Life is better here. Live JoviBelterra.com, 737-387-6870.
This show is brought to you in part by the Mallet Integrity Team, serving Dripping Springs, Austin, and the surrounding areas of Central Texas since 2004. When you need the best real estate advice and service, give them a call at 512-829-2062 or email them at malletintegrityteam.com. And now here's Steve and Michelle.
And we're back with former state rep and CEO of the American Energy Institute, Jason Isaac. Welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be on. Thanks for having me. It's exciting.
We've been wanting to have you on for a while, and you're doing some new things. And your time as a state rep, you did a lot of stuff, and we want to hear about that. So tell us how you ended up in Dripping Springs, though.
Oh, gosh. We had both of our boys, my wife and I, we went to school at Stephen F. Austin State University, graduated, moved to Dallas, was working in a career. And I just had a bunch of friends that lived in Dallas. And I worked in sales and traveled quite a bit. And I was fortunate that she followed me. And then we got married and had 2 boys in Dallas. And I kept hearing my friends talk about if they could live anywhere in the state, it would be in or around Austin. And my wife has family down in just south of Wimberley. Their address is San Marcos, but it's pretty much Wimberley. Yeah. And we would come and visit all the time and go into 7A Ranch. And I said, well, it really doesn't matter to me where we live. Wherever makes you happy. And we've got young kids. Let's get close to family and raise them near cousins. And that was really important to her and I. And so I came out to Austin one time out in the hill country out here playing golf on a work trip. And I got back. Actually, I think I called her and I said, hey, let's just move to Austin. And I hear this thud in the background, like thud. And she's like, done. And I was like, I'm just thinking out loud. I'm like, I don't want to live in Travis County. I don't want to live in the city of Austin. It has to be somewhere outside. And so she's like, done, we're doing it. I have family there. That's where we're going. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just thinking out loud. And she's like, nope, it's too late. And sure enough, I got back from my trip and she's like, here are the dates that we're going to be in Austin. I've already checked your calendar. You need to make hotel reservations. I already have appointments set up with realtors. We're going to see out. And I'm like, wow.
That sounds like Carrie.
That sounds like
Carrie. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And sure enough, like we found a house in Belterra. And I know we'll get into the political discussion here, but I've had these aspirations since I was young and in high school, feeling like I called to serve. Like the military didn't seem right for me, although all of my family and being raised, my mother was a good Methodist mother, gave me a lot of guilt trips. So I felt like I had to serve. I had to give back in some fashion. And so I thought, you know what, I'll run for office one day and maybe that's how I'll serve my community and just do it for a short period of time, not as a career. And then I looked at the maps and I said, hey, well, let's move to Dripping Springs. I remember we came out to a friend's wedding and we spent some time here in the area. And this is early 2000s.
So, it was still a little podunk town.
It really was. And I loved it. And Belterra was just being built. We were one of the first houses in that community and just jumped in, feet first. And it turned out to be a really good decision.
And then, so you kind of had an inkling to run for office, but what was the moment that sealed it? Like, okay, here's the office I'm going to run for.
Well, so being really naive and while we were in the process, I'm looking at like political maps and I had gone to some campaign schools, just like, how do you do this? Because there's campaign schools that'll teach you, things like how to go block walking and what software to use to find the list of voters and phone banking solutions and texting solutions and what to say and how to communicate effectively. And it was just really interesting to me that these congressional districts and House districts and Senate districts, they're all drawn during the census period every 10 years. And I thought, well, hey, there's a Democrat in Congress and there's a Democrat in the Texas House. Why don't we just move there and we'll take one of them out? And I was very naive and just kind of like joking. Like, I'm like, there's no way this is going to happen. I mean, I'd never run for office. We're not independently wealthy. And I joked. And then sure enough, 5 years later, we did. And I remember going out block walking all through Hays County, knocking on people's doors. And they're like, how long have you lived here? And I was like, oh, we've only lived here 5 years. And the response I kept getting was, wow, that long?
Oh, yeah.
And so I dropped the only part real quick. I was like, we've lived here 5 years.
Part of the community.
Yeah. So it was interesting. But the thing that pushed me over is I thought, well, if I'm going to get involved, maybe I should just spend some time at the Capitol. I'd never been to the Capitol until 2007. And I was in the trucking industry. I marketed technology to trucking companies. And that was my sales job. I traveled all over the country for it, predominantly in Texas. And they have Trucking Day at the Capitol with the Texas Trucking Association. And so I'm like, well, I'll go up there. And I remember owners of trucking companies were like, what are you doing here? You don't own any trucks. And I was like, wow, that's not very welcoming.
Yeah.
And I said, do you understand that my ability to provide for my family depends on your success? And some of these owners of the trucking companies are like, I'd never thought of it like that. And they're like, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if you're not doing well, then my family's not doing well. And it was in 2006, they had changed a taxing structure here in Texas. We used to pay 4%, businesses would pay 4% on their profits. And so what it did is a lot of companies at the end of the year would just spend a lot of money. They'd go out and they'd buy new trucks. They'd go out and buy new equipment. And guess what? That's generating sales tax.
Yeah.
And so they'd show they broke even so they didn't have to pay any business tax. Well, the legislature's like, oh, I'll fix this problem. I'll charge them 1% of revenue. Well, high revenue businesses, and this was interestingly enough, I had looked at some research by the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and it showed that about 10% of the businesses in the state of Texas would see a 500% increase in their tax liability. And they did. And so I noticed in 2007, 2008, 2009, trucking companies weren't buying from me. And I'm like, there are decisions that are being made in that pink dome that are making it harder on me to provide for my family. And so I kind of got tired of telling myself, oh, I'll run for office in 2 years. I'll run for office in 2 years. No, this isn't the right time. I'll wait. And so I finally just called my own bluff and I was like, I'm going to file to run for office. And a great friend of mine that I was coaching lacrosse with, it turns out he was involved in politics. I had no idea, but he's one of the leading pollsters in the country and a brilliant communicator. And he finally said, well, you need to look at the maps here. And I would recommend that you look at the Texas House. I know you want to serve. He's like, you're going to lose, but it could set you up for a good thing with redistricting happening. Yeah. He goes, because you'll never beat your incumbent. He's the second most proficient fundraiser in the Texas House, and he's going to outspend you, and you're going to lose. But this gives you the best chance to win. And recommended that he goes, you don't want to go to D.C. You want to stay close to your family. And he knew how I was with my kids and my wife, and we spent a lot of time together, and it's really important to us. And so I took his advice, and then he really told me, don't run for Congress. You won't win. He goes, but run for this seat. You're going to lose, but you'll be close.
That's so funny.
And then I saw him the night of the election victory, and he's like, "Wow, you might have won the congressional race," because we won overwhelmingly in 2010 when I won my first race, won by 8 points. And
so you served 8 years.
I did. Yeah, I served 8 years. And it was funny because on the campaign trail, my then predecessor, who's actually a great business leader in Hays County now, and I think he's just done a great job in the community, and I speak highly of him. We had a very cordial race. It didn't look that way on TV. It didn't look that way in the mail, but we'd see each other and we're shaking hands, and people are like, I can't believe you're talking to him. Yeah. He said bad things about you on TV. And I was like, it's fine. We're friends. It's competitive. It's not like he was, insulting my kids or anything.
How much does it cost to run a campaign?
Oh, my gosh. So it was interesting because I had some people come and talk to me and say, please don't run against him because he'll spend $1 million against you. And you will cost us, there's people within the Republican Party at the time saying you'll cost us every single race down ballot.
Really?
And I told them after the election, I said, you lied. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, he spent $2 million.
Oh,
and then did you also go, told you so?
Yeah. And I was like, and Republicans won every single race down ballot that year. But we were able to raise and spend about $700,000. So
he
it's very
spent
expensive.
2 and you spent 7.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's really,
what's the most expensive part about running a campaign?
So for this race, when you get around a metropolitan area, it's buying TV.
Oh.
Yeah, you've got to be up on broadcast TV, and if I had to guess, that's probably where he spent $450,000 to $500,000.
Is that still true today with the advent of this kind of new media, kind of like what we're doing right now?
Yeah, because we're all streaming everything. Like, I can't tell you the last time I saw a commercial.
Is it still?
Yeah, it really is, because doing stuff on YouTube and the social media advertisements, those aren't very expensive, but the broadcast TV is. But that's really where you reach an audience, is being on broadcast TV.
I can't remember the last time I tuned into a local broadcast channel. So everything, I've been streaming everything for at least 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, there's still quite a few people that do.
Yeah.
Which is and their voters, but some of the marketing's gotten a lot more targeted. So maybe, and it's still really expensive to do broadcast TV, and not just cable buys. A lot of people have done targeted cable buys because you can then get into some really specific areas, but those don't reach as many people as broadcast TV. So I'm sure there's some sellers of broadcast TV commercials that are thanking me for saying this right now.
Right.
It's just the facts.
What do you think were your best or your biggest accomplishments for your time in office?
There was a couple. It's actually my very first bill. There's a gentleman that has recently passed away that lived just up the street here in Dripping Springs, and he came to me and we passed. My first bill was House Bill 1514, and he said, "Hey, I don't have the word veteran on my driver's license." And other states offer this. At the time, it was like 27 other states offered it. And I said, well, what are the benefits of having that on there? And he says, well, then I wouldn't have to carry my DD 214, which is this piece of paper. And it's got personal information that you typically don't want to carry around in your wallet in case you lose it. And he says, I really just don't like having to carry around. And he wasn't retired military. He had served for 8 years. So he didn't have his retired ID card. And I said, this just makes sense. If you're honorably discharged and you want it on there, it's optional, it's free. And it was really cool because then I would have a lot of the veterans come up to me after passing this bill. It was the first bill I passed, first bill I presented on the House floor. It was a lot of fun. I had several veterans in the house, and I'm not a veteran. I didn't serve in the military, but it was really, I guess, meaningful to me to pass this bill. I grew up hearing about my mom's cousin who was MIA in Vietnam for years, and when I was in high school, they found his remains, and it was the very first military service that I'd ever been to. Is probably one of the most, I guess, probably one of the most impressive things on my life as I was a teenager at that point in time, but when they do the missing man formation, the 21 gun salute, and present the family with the flag, it was really important to me to, I guess, honor the people that have given the ultimate sacrifice and those that have just signed up to serve and protect our country and our communities. So it was really special to do that and to get this idea from somebody else and have him reference. I've talked about him. His name was Kevin. Again, he passed away just in the last couple of years. But I talked to him. I've met his family. I think he has a son that works at Hog Heaven.
Oh wow!
And I've talked to him and just did a memorial resolution for his dad. But this was, to me, constituents what they're supposed to do. Yeah. And I always referred to my constituents as my bosses. And it kept me humble because it's really easy when you've got a lot of people telling you, oh, how great you did today, and you're great, and gosh, you're doing a fantastic job, and people love you, and you hear that. I'm blessed that I have a wife that humbles me when I go home, and I did go home every night during the session. We didn't have an apartment because we lived close. It was important for me to get back, so it kept me out of trouble, but knowing that I had a boss that asked me to do something and then I was able to get it done was really important for me.
Didn't you have something to do with when they resurfaced Ranch Road 12 and they chip sealed it it was like people were complaining like 3 miles away they could hear the noise on the road? Didn't you have something to do with fixing that?
Yeah, we actually had a town hall at the old which was City Hall now. Yeah. And we told TxDOT, like, hey, you're coming down because you guys have chip sealed this road. And they're like, oh, it meets all of our standards. And I'm like, it doesn't meet my standards. Yeah. And it doesn't meet my constituent standards. Yeah. And then Representative Paul Workman, who had just the very end of Ranch Road 12, where it goes into Travis County, he had that in his district. And so he was hearing feedback from his constituents too. And we said, you guys need to come in and visit with the people that live in the area that drive up and down this road. It was packed. Yeah. And then Paul and I went over to the Whataburger afterwards and sat down with the then local TxDOT.
The unofficial city hall in Dripping Springs.
That's exactly right. And it was just basically like, you're going to fix this and you're going to do it very quickly. And lo and behold, they found some money and they fixed it pretty quickly.
It got fixed really quick.
It really
I remember that.
Gosh, it was garbage. It was absolutely awful.
It was bad. For a major road, that was not the way to go.
And we didn't have to pass a bill to get it done. There's some great things. I'll talk, there's a young lady, I won't mention her full name. I think she's graduated high school, but her first name was Alana. And Alana sent me an email one time. And I remember I was driving back and she was complaining about 1826 and she was in third grade at the time.
Oh, geez.
And so I called her back and her mom or aunt answers the phone. I'm like, hey, this is Jason Isaac. I'm your state representative. And Alana had sent an email to my office and I just wanted to call and talk to her. And they're like, what? Who is it? They thought it was like a prank call or something. and I was like, no, she's my boss and I want to talk to her. And they were just shocked. And next thing we know is we wind up doing a Skype from the house floor. I think it was like 2013 or 15. I think it was 13.
They want to make sure you're a real person.
Yeah, and then I Skyped with her entire classroom from the house floor. It was right before we went into session, before we gavelled in. And so I was talking to them and I said, I need help because I'm not going to pass a law to get the road fixed on 1826. There was no center turn lane. She had seen a bad accident. And I said, would each one of you get me 3 letters? Like you can write one, and then maybe get one from your parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles or people that you know in the community. Could you get me a letter of support that you want to see 1826 at a center turn lane? And then I coordinated like this media personality, Russell Wild. At the time, he was with a local media station. I said, hey, Russell, I've got this young girl coming up to the Capitol. and she's going to bring me some letters of support. And I'm going to have actually a friend from TxDOT who's really high up in TxDOT come over and receive them. But I need some good publicity about this. And then I need a little bit of pressure on TxDOT. You know, I'm playing like the game here. Like, this is how you get things done. You don't necessarily have to pass a bill. Well, Alana has showed up and she had, I think it was like over 180 letters of support. All of her students in her class, the Chamber of Commerce, the city, churches, the EMS.
Wow.
I mean, she got proclamations done. She had really done such a good job.
Is she working for you now?
No, she's not. I still see her. She's still friends with our younger son. We see her every year or so. It's kind of neat. And we remember that and kind of talk about it. But
great.
She shows up, and I'm sure there's still video clips of her out there. She's got all these microphones clipped on her because her aunt had called a couple of local medias. And we're in the press conference room right off the house floor, and she's just got all these microphones in her face. It was the cutest thing.
I wonder if that would have never happened if you hadn't have called her. Like if she'd have become that sort of activist without you first, her reaching out to you, but you responding and actually engaging with her. Yeah. That was like, she felt like your conversation with her made her feel like I can make a difference. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, she really did. Yeah. And hopefully, you know, some of these people will go on to be in positions of service and remember who they work for, who they're serving. And, you know, because again, I was very humbled by other people keeping me on point, and but it was just really important, and it was great. And then I was able to call her back a couple of weeks later because the commissioner of TxDOT had called me, and he says, "Hey, that project to widen H-26 was barely on the list."
I got a bunch of 10-year-olds.
And he's like, now it's going to get done with like in the next year. And so sure enough, you drive down 1820, it's a little safer. It's probably still a little mess. There's a lot more people here, but in some spots there's a center turn lane. Yeah. And it was because a girl in third grade had
so
contacted.
Cool.
She recognized who worked for her. Yeah. And it was.
I wanted to ask that particular question is like, what was your job as far as when you said your constituents would reach out to you? Like, what could you do and what couldn't you do?
You know, there's a lot of casework that goes in, and I was blessed to have an incredible staff, which my wife, who's now in office as the state representative for Dripping and Wimberley and all of Comal County, was able to get some of that same staff back. And so they know the district very well. But there's a lot of casework, child support cases, just some really difficult things. And I just had a great staff handle those cases, the caseload. That it was, for me, it was working on policy and things that needed to get changed because you needed to pass a law or you needed to apply pressure to some agencies. You know, when we had the floods in Wimberley, the agencies were incredibly responsive, and it was. I love our government here in Texas. It's much more responsive. If a member of Congress goes to the EPA and complains about something, the EPA doesn't care. They're like, oh, that guy will be gone from office in a few years. We're bureaucrats. We're going to be here for decades. In Texas, it's absolutely the opposite. The agencies I've found have been incredibly responsive. Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, the Water Development Board, they were out there during the cleanup and right after our emergency management, Texas Department of Emergency Management, DPS. I mean, they're incredibly responsive to issues. Even so, some bad times. There were some times where my family had threats. And we had law enforcement outside of our house and DPS and the sheriff's office going and visiting with people that had left some pretty bad emails on my Capitol or voicemails on my Capitol office, threatening me and my children and telling us we know where you live and we know where your kids go to school. And that's kind of the bad part of it.
That's the ugly part.
That's the ugly part of it. Yeah.
So I had a very, very important question about your time served, and now it is carried over into Carrie.
Yes.
The famous couch.
yes.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
We have a chaise longue, I think is how you pronounce it in French. We have a chaise. We had decided, Carrie, she's the artistic and the photographer in the family. She's like, I want to go put our sofa out in the middle of the field and take a picture
with our dog.
With our dog that just passed last year. Little Daisy, our Jack Russell Terrier that we had for like 15, 16 years. She's since departed. But we would just take this photo out in the middle of the field. And then it was really, we took it before I even ran for office. And then I took it and used it as our campaign photo because it was really unique and people in the Republican Party loved it. And it's,
every year, I was like, I couldn't wait to get the Isaac Christmas card. It was like, where's the couch today?
And It's interesting because during my campaign consultant was like, hey, we need to do I want to bring that photo to life. Like I want you and the wife and the boys. Yes, I know they're a little bit, or they maybe a year older from that point in time from the original photo, and the dog, get them all out together. We're going to take that photo again, but then we're going to do video and bring it to life. And so we put the photo out in the middle of the field in Belterra, which is where we were, and we're shooting video with our camera crew, and we just walked about 100 yards away from the sofa. It was just over a little hill. We were up by the Welcome Center there under some cedar trees, and then we go let's go down to the sofa now. We're going to take pictures there.
Get ready for this.
The sofa was gone.
No way.
It was gone. And I'm like, ha, 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 this is funny. Where's the sofa? And they're like, we're not playing a joke. And so I'm like, what's going on? So I started calling people within the developers within Belterra, the lawn maintenance guy.
Was it Patrick Rose? Did he
we're like, I can't believe it. He's stooping this low. He's stealing our sofa. And so I started driving around looking in the dumpsters. I'm like, maybe someone just came by and they picked it up and thought it was out in the middle of the field as trash, and they threw it away. And it's I only got mad on the campaign twice, and that was the first time. The other time was our son fell down at Texas State, and someone out there was taking pictures of him just bawling, like he'd skinned up his knees and his elbows,
So ridiculous.
and it was I got a little upset. I said, hey, you need to delete those photos. I didn't take any photos. And I was like, let me see.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, like that photo of my kid. And he's showing me the screen. He's like, oh, I didn't realize that. And I was like, just delete them.
Did you find the couch?
So our camera crew, we sat there for a couple of hours. We wind up doing this video of a missing family member. There's a missing person. If you've seen it, and I'm trying to get online and find out where we bought the sofa and see if I can get a replacement. I'm like, we got to have this back. And we put this video up on YouTube. Then I get a call from Russell Wild, who at the time was at the Time Warner Cable or Spectrum, whatever the one. And he's like, hey, this is kind of a good politics story. I've heard of signs getting stolen, but not sofas. You want to do a video on you want to do an interview on this tomorrow? And I'm like, ha ha. And then I thought it was my opponent calling, trying to prank me to get me to show up somewhere. And so then a couple of hours later, our camera crew is leaving our neighborhood. And then all of a sudden, and I'm upset, I hear a bang on our door, and I open the door, and there's a white truck with our sofa in the back of it. And our camera crew had found this guy had pulled in front of them, and they do some pit, not a pit maneuver, but they cut in front of the guy, and what are you doing? He's like, I thought it was bulk pickup week. And they're like, it is not bulk pickup week. And he'd been driving around for hours looking for other stuff and only found one nice sofa.
In the middle of a field.
I walk outside, there's a white truck pulling away, and I'm like, is that my opponent's white truck? I knew it.
A couple of kids' bikes.
And our sofa's in the front yard, and we got it back. And so then I called Russell at Time Warner Cable at the time, and I said, hey, our sofa came back. And I was like, do you want me to show up with it? Or do you still want to do this? And he still did the story. So we got all this earned, free media, if you will.
So
and it just turned out to be this great story.
I've never heard this story before.
Yeah, you can't make that stuff up.
I think that sofa was in the house. We came over to your house, and it was in there. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
and so since then we've taken it to the Capitol, and we've taken family photos there, and
the famous couch.
And now it's got an air tag in it, so if anybody's watching, you see it out there. We're going to get it back. We're going to get it back.
Yeah. Jason, tell us what you're doing now.
So when I left the legislature, I did 4 terms. As I mentioned, I'm not independently wealthy. I'm not an attorney. I'm not retired, and I'm a slow learner. And it took me about 8 terms or 8 years, 4 terms to figure that out, that you really need to be one of those 3 things to be able to survive and raise a family in the legislature. And so I could only handle doing 4 terms. And,
Wait. So you're a former politician, but you're not independently wealthy.
Not independently wealthy.
What a novel idea.
Went broke over 8 terms. So like Donald Trump and I lost wealth in office. I would say mine was probably more substantial. But I went to go work at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, leaving office. They have an energy and environment initiative there called Life Powered. It's about raising America's energy IQ, telling the good story about our environmental leadership and how access to affordable and reliable energy is key to human flourishing. I did that for about 5 years, but about 4 years in, our CEO brought me some research and said, hey, go find some trade organizations that we can partner with that are in the energy space that agree with our free market principles, that would really be okay with lowering the cost of energy. And surprisingly or not surprisingly, after about a year of research, there aren't any trade organizations that are really free market warriors anymore. In fact, some of them had removed that term free market or free enterprise from their mission statements over decades. And I'm like, wait a second. and certainly none that advocate to lower the cost of energy, that would be okay with lowering the cost of a barrel of oil or lowering the cost of natural gas. And I had been really persistent in pushing back on this term called ESG, this environmental, social, and governance. It's where DEI falls under the ESG umbrella, this diversity, equity, inclusion, this racism that's supposedly okay falls under ESG. And what they do is they've forced banks and financial institutions, they being large financial institutions, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street are the three largest financial institutions on the planet. They control a significant portion of our wealth, but they've created a cartel under the UN to force companies to stop loaning money to energy industries. And we saw a massive decrease. I saw a 94% reduction in funds being available to companies that produce oil and gas in this country over a 5-year period.
Oh, wow.
It's really hard to do things if you don't have access to capital.
That's right.
And when you start, and you look at the banks now, almost every single big bank has a statement on their website about how they will not make funds available to companies that are producing oil and gas in the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge. So they're targeting Alaska. They're targeting American energy, but they'll invest money in the China Energy Coal Company, which is like, wait a second, like that's hypocritical.
So why is that happening? What's the basis for all of that happening in our country?
Well, it's for me, it's a globalist initiative. They want to drive and centralize control really over every aspect of our lives, and it's really unfortunate. But they're doing it under the guise of this climate narrative, like, oh, we have to do this to save the climate. Which, if we're living in a climate crisis, we're living wonderfully well through it.
No kidding.
Deaths from weather-related events are down 99% over the last 100 years. People don't understand that life expectancy in the United States is 20 years longer than it is in places in Africa that don't have access to energy. Energy is the key to flourishing. So some of this research and my work on the front led me to starting a new trade organization. It kind of incubated the Texas Public Policy Foundation, but completely separate because they're a 501c3, where I'm a 501c6. And we also have a sister organization that's a 501c4. Now, the C6 is a trade organization. I represent companies that are American energy producers that unabashedly support free markets, that are okay with me advocating for policies that reduce the cost of energy. And then we have our sister organization, a 501c4, which is a political organization. So we have a state director. Her name's Molly. She'll be working the Capitol this session. She's a registered lobbyist. We've hired a couple of lobbyists to push bills that promote grid reliability, that against EV mandates, that are against nuisance lawsuits. You're seeing a lot of cities and people team up and sue energy companies, saying they're causing a catastrophic climate crisis. In fact, just recently, 2 cases in Maryland got thrown out. The judge laughingly just threw these cases out that cities are wanting to sue Exxon and others for their impact on the climate, which is laughable. Again, if we're in a catastrophic climate crisis, we're doing really well. And the U.S. is the world leader. We're world leaders in clean air. We've reduced pollution, things that in certain concentrations impact human health. I love doing speeches where I'll have a Topo Chico with me and I'll take a sip of Topo Chico. And I was like, I just ingested higher concentrations of CO2 than what's in the atmosphere, and I'm not going to spontaneously combust. And then I testified in front of Congress. It's like, I'm Jason Isaac, and I live a high carbon lifestyle. And I think the rest of the world should too. And places that do have high per capita CO2 emissions have economic prosperity, and with that, you get environmental leadership. And CO2 has just been demonized. I call it the climate cult's Kool-Aid. I'm getting a little more political here, but it really is. And if you start to research the science, and believe me, this isn't something where I've just been indoctrinated my entire life, because as a first-term legislator, I carried and got passed the Texas Emission Reduction Program within the state of Texas to provide grants, to provide subsidies for EVs, something now I vehemently oppose because I've done the research and I realize that you and I, if we don't own an EV, we're paying for one because we're paying for higher costs for gasoline vehicles. The subsidies they receive is so much more than a $7,500 tax credit. It's nearly $100,000 per EV sold is subsidized.
I was reading about that GM was saying that they lose $100,000 for every EV they sell.
And then you and I are pitching in $100,000. Ratepayers, taxpayers, and purchasers of gas vehicles are pitching about. So if they were to sell that vehicle at true cost, like the Ford Lightning would cost about $250,000.
You know, the other kind of a rabbit trail here, but the other thing that's not factored into that, because people say, well, you can save money with an electric car. That's only if you are looking at the cost of electricity to charge it. A 3-year-old Mustang EV, the one that looks like an SUV.
Mustang,
those were $65,000 when they're new. When they're 3 years old, they're worth $20,000. $45,000 worth of depreciation. If you factor that in, you're way better off driving a gas-powered car.
It's the Mach-E.
Yeah, the Mach-E.
Yeah.
Jason, I want you to explain to me, like I am a fifth grader or that I'm blonde, explain to me why I should care.
Well,
about what?
About what you were just explaining.
So like the subsidies and the trade organization I now represent we are anti-subsidies because subsidies are inflationary. So they're taking tax dollars, they're taking future debt and spending it now. So it's actually printing more money, which is making our money worth less. Mm-hmm. The more money they print, it's inflationary. And so that's what's happening right now with the subsidies that are being dumped in. Companies like Rivian got a $6.5 billion tax-backed loan right at the end of last year. This is a company that's losing money that should have gone out of business a long time ago.
Really?
Then you and I propped them up with $6.5 billion in subsidies. That doesn't have to be paid back. I mean, we've seen this with Solyndra and other companies. I'm just anti-subsidies. And yes, oil and gas companies receive subsidies and tax credits. And let's level the playing field. Let's get rid of all of them.
Is this what DOGE is going to partly do?
I hope so. I think that, and I keep telling people this will be the biggest test of DOGE is if you can get rid of the EV subsidies because it's $100,000 per EV sold. When you look at the cost to fill up a tank for electricity is equivalent to $1.41 per gallon. I'm glad you mentioned this, Steve. It's actually, when you consider the cost for ratepayers that are bearing, because you have to increase the infrastructure. If you live on a city block now and you hook up several EVs at one time, you're going to blow a transformer. And so they've got to come out and they've got to upgrade the hardware. The electricity is costing more. It's closer to $25 per gallon equivalent when you consider all of the other charges.
Yes. Okay, that's something I understand.
If you're an EV owner, you're not paying that $25 because society is bearing the cost. And is that really a good use of the least among us, their money? There's a reason there's a lawsuit in California called the 200, which is 200 civil rights organizations, people that I politically don't align with, but they're suing the state of California, the California Air Resources Board, saying that their policies, their environmental policies, the EV mandate, and so many more are violating the Civil Rights Act. Ooh. Because they are discriminating against communities of color, the disparate impacts on these communities of color. They're forcing them to live further away to find affordable housing. Older, less safe vehicles they're having to drive because they don't make $100,000 a year and can't afford an EV or fancy golf cart. So it's just a really good lawsuit that's pointing out the hypocrisy of the left who claims to be for the poor, but they pass these policies that are inflationary, that hurt the left and that hurt the least among us. And so I advocate against those. And it's unfortunate that some of the trade organizations out there that you would think would be for similar policies that I support, they really don't. They've bought into the climate globalist narrative, which is really unfortunate. Exxon coming out against the president withdrawing from the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement does nothing to mitigate a changing climate. It just makes everything more expensive.
But is it beneficial to have someone like Elon Musk on that because he's the Tesla, or is that going to stand the test of time?
So Tesla is profitable. They would be very close to only breaking even if most of their profit comes from the sale of credits. Every Tesla that's built, they get credit for 114 miles per gallon. But then because it's a pure electric vehicle, a plug-in electric vehicle, they get a multiplier where the Department of Transportation has given them an illegal multiplier of 6.67. So you get credit for 714 miles per gallon. So they then sell those credits to Ford and GM, Stellantis, other automobile manufacturers so that they can meet the corporate average fuel economy requirements. So on paper, we're improving fuel economy, but only by people trading credits. But on the real world, fuel economy is not increasing. And it would be if you didn't have this gimmick, this scheme, because companies like Toyota, who are finally speaking up and pushing back, saying this EV mandate is absurd, we could actually make hybrid electric vehicles. The components that go in an electric vehicle, I think the chairman of Toyota said they could make 66 hybrid electric vehicles. reduce the cost of those vehicles and increase fuel economy.
Yeah.
And if you're concerned about emissions, I'm not. Yeah, I like having clean air. Let's talk about pollution. I don't want to conflate emissions and pollution.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's what the left has done. They've demonized so-called greenhouse gas emissions, which are mostly water and CO2, two things that are pretty important to life on Earth.
The other thing that's not talked about in all that, because the climate is obviously changing, because it changes all the time. Yeah. It has changed since the Earth was just a big flaming ball. It's been changing. Yes. But what's not talked about is if the climate changes, people are not static. If it gets 10 degrees, and it won't, but if it got 10 degrees warmer here in Texas, people would move, or people would come up with technologies to make it more bearable here. It's like they make it seem like we're all standing on the beach and the water's going to rise and we're all just going to stand there and drown. It's like, no, we're going to walk away from the rising water. And that just drives me nuts.
Yeah. I mean, if that were the case, people would have left the Maldives years ago because the Maldives is supposed to be underwater by now. It's every single prediction has not come true that the alarmists have made.
Nothing that they've talked about has come to fruition.
No, not at all.
Do you think, I'm going to change the subject a little bit. Do you think that President Trump coming in is erasing some of these woke policies, the DEI policies? Do you think this is just a pause in that and that it'll come roaring back at some point in the future? Or do you think we've seen the end of all that?
I think we've seen the end of it, and I'm an optimist by nature. And I'm hopeful that that's accurate, because the companies are losing money with these programs, and especially on the ESG front, companies like investing billions of dollars into EVs and they're not making any money, and that's really the important thing about being in business is to make money, right? Because it's hard to continue business if you're not making money. And so you want to turn a profit, you want to pay good wages, and you want to have competition. I'm a free market capitalist wholeheartedly. And some of these companies are realizing that these programs, and there's also legal liabilities when you have DEI programs in. I've done research and help advise attorneys general around the country who are suing some of these businesses for their policies. And some of them are citing their legal concerns as to why they're getting away from them. And so it's nice. It's refreshing. There's a guy named Robbie Starbuck in Tennessee who's exposed a lot of these businesses, starting with Tractor Supply this summer for their DEI programs at Tractor Supply. I mean, this is a company that sells farming and ranching equipment and supplies to rural America. And they're out sponsoring these parades that don't align with their customers. They're doing other things, communicating with the Human Rights Campaign, which sounds like a great name, but it's not at all. They force you to do certain things that you wouldn't otherwise do. And they were bending to that pressure, and they're no longer doing that. Tractor Supply took them 21 days. They issued I wish they would have said, we made a bad decision. We're not going to do that anymore. But they just said, we're not going to do that anymore. It's something that's been important to me to tell my boys is, accept responsibility for things that are going wrong in your life. Accept responsibility. Don't look to blame others. Your life will be a whole lot more peaceful.
Without a doubt.
You won't be angry all the time. You can just like, gosh, what could I have done different? To avoid that situation. I wish Tractor Supply had owned up to it and accepted responsibility. They didn't, but they did say, we're not going to do that anymore. They're no longer complying with any terms that are in the Paris Accord, which was silly in the first place. They're not tracking their carbon emissions, which is great because now those things are being weaponized against their customers. So it's kind of nice to see them correct action so quick.
Great supplies for our farms and ranches. That's all we want from you. That you don't have to do all this other stuff.
That's great. I do. I hope it's gone. I hope ESG is next. I hope that Elon is good getting rid of some of the subsidies that his company benefits from tremendously, that they've advocated for, that they've sent in letters to Congress that, hey, we need to keep this in place. They're advocating in the UK to keep the EV mandates in the UK. And that's just very recently. So I'll keep shining a light on this and hoping that he's recognizes the burden that the EV mandate is putting on people and some of these other policies.
You mentioned the ESG thing. What a lot of people don't know about that is a lot of these companies that manage investments use these ESG policies. So you've got your retirement plan and you're going, well, I'm going to put whatever, $10,000 a year in my retirement plan. And the person running or the people running your investments are focusing on changing the world more than putting more money in your pocket for retirement. I think if most people, if they had to sign a letter saying, okay, what we're doing now, we're not going to maximize your return. We're going to focus on making the world a more equal place. People would go, no, I want more money for retirement, but it wasn't sold that way.
No, it wasn't. It was virtue signaling is how I testified in front of Congress. I've testified in front of Congress on this issue twice now, and ESG is proving to make what it does to make energy and really everything. It makes it expensive, scarce, and government controlled. That's the ESG, or everyone's suffering guaranteed is the other ESG acronym that I like to use. But you've got these, it's virtue signaling. Again, you've got companies getting ESG ratings, such as there's a company here in the Austin area that has mineral rights. And they had a lower ESG rating than the China Energy Coal Company. But I thought this was about, so you're basically taking someone that has real estate investments and giving them a lower ESG rating than someone who has coal, which has been unfairly demonized for decades. Again, coal is incredible here in the United States. We actually need more coal on our electric grid because you can keep 9 months, a year of coal on site for storage. There's no other fuel that you can do that. And so when things get tight with the grid and we want electricity, we need electricity, coal is great thanks to our pollution control technology. We have baghouses and scrubbers that capture all the bad things before they make it into the air. We need more of that.
It's not like the old days where there's a big old smokestack with black smoke.
No, not at all.
You can barely even tell there's anything coming out.
Yeah, it's all steam now. People still see it, and especially when it's colder, look at that. It's steam.
It's steam.
Yeah. It's water vapor. It's increasing the humidity, which I'm not a big fan of.
Well, no kidding.
It's terrible for my hair.
Yeah.
I know that you're not quite in the policy making realm now, like where you're not actually making the policy now. But I am curious, just because you're up in Washington all the time. I mean, I think the last 2 times I went to Washington, you were on my same flight. It's like, are you ever not on a plane back and forth to Washington? But what are your feelings, or what is the rumblings that you hear around TikTok right now? Do you let your kids have TikTok?
So yeah, unfortunately, our kids are on TikTok, which kind of quite alarms me, especially Carrie and I, who we sat through a presentation this weekend on China and how they've infiltrated. You look at the wireless routers, the equipment that the cranes,
the encryption.
And I was trying to tell it, like, my kids, like, what's so bad about TikTok? And I think this is where the right has done a terrible job of messaging. They're like, oh, we just got to ban TikTok because of Chinese interference, Chinese hacking all of our information. And I said, so imagine that you've got TikTok on a phone and someone walks into the Pentagon, Department of Defense, and they connect to a Wi-Fi network in the Department of Defense and the Pentagon. And my kid's like, oh, I never thought about that. And I said, so now the Chinese have access to the Wi-Fi and to the network and every computer that's on that network within the Pentagon. Like, oh, that's kind of a big deal. And I said, but then imagine that they're listening to what the purchases, or they're looking at the searches that you're doing for the products that you like. And you take that aggregate and it's like, oh, everybody's searching for hammers. And then the Chinese recognize an American company that makes hammers. Well, guess what? We're going to undercut that company and start making hammers in China and shipping them to the United States and filling up the stores at Tractor Supply and Walmart with cheaper hammers that are Chinese made, because we recognize a trend on TikTok of people wanting to buy hammers. It's just little things like that, of how they can manipulate the market with data and market research that they can get from the app. And so it is really frightening. And they come into your network and they get connected to your home Wi-Fi, and then that home Wi-Fi, my phone hits it. And we've got 27,000 contacts in our contacts. So now not only do they have every single elected official in the state of Texas email address and likely their cell phone number, they've got more information. And then they can get their IP addresses. And then you get IP addresses and you start tracking movements of where people go. It's really frightening, the access that they have and the things that people are like, oh, I don't have anything to hide. Oh, you don't.
Michelle says that all the time.
My Chinese spy is very confused on my algorithm, my TikTok algorithm. But what I've heard about TikTok was that it's not so much about what people are watching now. If you imagine the 16, 17, 18-year-olds of what they are watching, and one day they are going to be the policymakers, right? Mm-hmm. And so the Chinese are capturing all of this information to be used potentially later, where I guess it was Elena.
Yeah,
is that her name?
Alana,
okay, Alana. Like, one day she is a policymaker, and when she was 16, 17 years old, she's searching something she probably shouldn't be, and it's like, beep, 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 beep. Here it is. Now all of a sudden it's public knowledge.
Yeah.
My understanding is that the TikTok terms of service, if you read through it, it says it's going to do all those things. It's going to access Wi-Fi that you're connected to. It's going to get all your information off your phone. It's going to look for IP.
Mallet,
it's like spelled out.
Your,
they're not even doing it secretly. It's spelled out in
you
their
read
terms
your
of service.
poncho.
No,
terms
I don't read the terms of service, but there have been attorneys that have, and they're like, you are basically agreeing to give away every bit of information that your phone ever has.
So what
access
they're
to.
trying to do though is sell that portion, ByteDance, right? To where now that information will stop, where there's more control. Is that
Yeah, I mean, in the Chinese Communist Party, I mean, they're going to use it to their manufacturing ability to produce products and goods and services that we utilize and to really crush American business. You look at what's happening on the EV space. I mean, you're not making an EV without Chinese components. It's just not happening. And China is now using child and slave labor to make EVs, and they're flooding the European market. There's about 200,000 EVs in Germany alone in Europe that meet their requirements. And so the German policymakers are saying we're going to go 100% electric vehicles. It's one of the reasons why half of the manufacturing capacity for cars in Germany, the number one economy in the EU, are at standstill. Wow. I mean, they're at 50% capacity. They're in their second year of a recession leading into a depression. Their economic output is coming to a grinding halt.
That's crazy.
Because did the Chinese infiltrate their policymakers and flush it like they've been doing that here in the United States? They've been funding nonprofits to really drive the climate alarmist narrative.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunately impacted policies in states like California. It's impacted policies here in the United States. People have thought, we've got to get rid of coal. Coal's terrible. While China's adding a coal-fired power plant every single week. I wish they would use pollution control technology like we do. They don't care.
They're polluting more than 20 other countries combined.
We were just talking about China, and my husband, he's in the semiconductor industry, and his boss was just in China, and he was telling me about all of the empty buildings that are there, that the economy there is just crud. Yeah. And that so many people have a home in the countryside and they have a home, downtown in some, large building, but you could be like the only person on this floor, which is crazy to me. It's kind of counterintuitive. Like what we're hearing is like,
I think that was, they were expecting a population boom and they built all these apartments and the population boom never happened or something. Was that what you? There
were some real estate companies last year that just tanked in value over 90%. BlackRock was a huge investor in those. BlackRock doesn't like me very much. They're the world's largest financial industry company in the world, over $11 trillion.
So why you have the cops outside your door?
I probably still need them. I wrote the bill. It's interesting because you talk about when I was in the legislature, I was writing bills, and I never thought when I got out that I'd still be writing bills, but I did. I actually wrote the very first draft of what would become Senate Bill 13 that says if you boycott fossil fuels, you can no longer do business with the state of Texas. It put BlackRock on the boycott list, not only in Texas, but then Oklahoma adopted it, Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia. And then BlackRock started hiring millions of dollars worth of lobbyists around the country to fight any efforts to push back on their discrimination against American energy producers. It also, someone passed a similar bill dealing with gun manufacturers because banks were not allowing credit card transactions at gun companies or buying ammunition, and they weren't making loans available if you were in that business. If you wanted to open up a new gun store or gun range, nope, they weren't doing it. So they were discriminating against an otherwise lawful business. And so we protected them here in Texas. It was fun because I was out of the legislature when I wrote this bill and worked with the lieutenant governor and his team to get it passed. And it was a lot of fun. Now it's kind of part of a coalition that's pushing back on fiduciary responsibility because our pension funds are being weaponized against the best interest of our state.
Yeah.
Well, what is going on? I know Todd is constantly talking about this, but can you explain to me what's going on in the Texas House right now with the controversy about Dustin Burrows and the losing committee chair appointments and so on and so forth?
Yeah, it's quite some shenanigans that are going on in the House, and my last legislative session was 2017, and in the Republican caucus, we changed the rules that said the nominee for the speaker candidate should be selected by the Republican caucus. So the Republican nominee should be selected by the Republican caucus. Yeah. And it was a hard fought battle because we had the same speaker for 10 years and we felt like that the last time that he was speaker, that session in 2017, that we weren't advancing the policy priorities that we thought we needed to advance. And so we changed the rules in the caucus. And then that speaker announces that he's not going to run for office. He's going to leave office. And so we know there's going to be a new speaker race, and we know that candidate's going to be selected out of the Republican caucus. And we thought that's great. That's kind of the reform that we wanted. It's something that the grassroots wanted. And so this time around, people were upset with the now former speaker and kind of the management on the floor. And so they started to get some new nominees to go before the Republican caucus. And there's a big reform group that kind of settled on one nominee. And then the caucus vote came up in December, and nobody could get like the first. You had to get 60. I think you had 2/3 on the first couple of votes, and then after a couple of votes, it dropped to 60%. Well, there was a big group of people that just walked out and left the meeting. It wasn't below quorum. And so they tried to get those members to come back, and they wouldn't come back. And so the caucus voted with still having a quorum and selected a gentleman named David Cook. And so he had 55, 56 commitments he had 62 commitments of people that yes, we are going to vote for the nominee that came out of the Republican caucus. What's interesting though, and I think that the former speaker, the now former speaker, kind of waited too late to say that he wasn't going to run. And Dustin Burrows jumped into the race as soon as he did. And Dustin's a great conservative from Lubbock. He's actually more conservative when you look at his past voting record than the nominee the Reform group had picked. And then the caucus ultimately supported and endorsed. And then we go to the House floor, and Dustin prevails with a minority of Republicans. So the majority of the Republicans voted for a guy named David Cook, and Dustin got, I can't remember the math, but maybe it was 30 some odd Republicans and essentially all the Democrats but two. And so he got elected speaker with more Democrat votes than he had Republican votes. And but again, I'm like, wait, Dustin's much more conservative than who you pick. So I'm still, again, I told you I'm an optimist. There's a lot of people that are really angry out there at the way things are going right now. I would say probably the biggest gut punch is there's a parliamentary procedure called calling the previous question. And essentially, if it's adopted by the floor, you actually have to vote for it. And you have to have 25 members, according to House rules, recognized to make the motion. And then you vote for it. It's up or down, like you have to have 76, a majority of the votes to vote for it to call the previous question. That just stops debate on things. This tool is seldom used. I'll tell the best story of when it was used last legislative session is it's on a midnight deadline day. And if the clock strikes midnight and you're debating a bill, that bill is dead. And everything that's on the schedule, they call it the calendar, everything that's on the list for the rest of the day is dead. It's all gone. You're done. And so you have two deadlines that are midnight deadlines toward the end of session. There's the House bill deadline, and then you have the Senate bill deadline. And this was the Senate bill deadline. So you'd already gone to midnight on the House bills. And then a few days later, you have the Senate bill deadline. So it starts with SB. And at midnight, anything that's up is gone. It's dead. And so what the people that aren't necessarily in power, the Democrats, will sit there and they'll do is they'll talk. And you get 10 minutes to debate a bill during these deadlines. And so then they'll make amendments and create another 10 minutes. They'll do what's called chubbing. It's a lot of talking. And they're just trying to run out the clock and kill a bunch of bills that they don't want to see killed. And there was actually, and this is unbeknownst to me, I'm like, I had a bill that I was following dealing with environmental, social, and governance that said insurance companies have to set their policies based on risk, not on political factors like ESG, because some people were being told, like the forestry industry was being denied insurance policies because they're in the forestry industry, which was, some people think is an unfavored politically industry. Like, give me a break. Yeah. And so you had companies that were operating and putting ESG factors into their insurance policies and denying people access to insurance. Capital and insurance are pretty important to have a business. Yeah. And so this bill was way late. I'm like, it's never going to pass. It's so late on the calendar. Well, unbeknownst to me, my wife had been gathering signatures to call the previous question. And so at 11:52, they submit a resolution to call the previous question. And then opposition gets 4 minutes to speak about opposing the previous question. Then the pro gets 4 minutes. And so you're on a strict time. Well, the opposition takes all 4 minutes. They're trying to get this. So at 11:56, Tom Oliverson, who's carrying the bill in the House, says, move passage. It takes 1 second. Yeah. And then they have the vote to call the previous question, which means stop debate and then vote the bill up or down. And so at 11:56, 11:57, they take that vote. The previous question is called. A majority of the members vote for it. Again, this is after 12 plus more hours of debating on the House floor. People getting to whine and complain and make amendments and do a lot of things for hours. And so they call the previous question at 11:58. They vote up or down on the bill, and the bill passes. Wow. And it was the last bill that
I'm
passed
like
the legislature.
sweating just listening to this.
It was the last bill that passed the legislature. And, I'd worked out. I was late. I was on my iPad. Then I'm watching the last few minutes, and I'm like, oh, my gosh. And Carrie got home at like 1:30 that evening, that night, that morning. And I'm like, what happened? And she's like, I had started gathering signatures like 6 hours earlier to call the previous question. Wow. She's like, I didn't know we were going to use it on that bill, but I knew that at some point in time we were going to need to use it. And, as someone else presented the signatures, they called the previous question. The speaker has to recognize somebody to do that. And so he recognized them to do that. Wow. And so what happened here in Texas the other day was they presented a rules package, and members have been working for a year to try to change the rules to really take away some of the power from the speaker, which some people think is too big, but also just some different rules amendments to, let's not have crazy people come and do prayers on the House floor. Let's go back to allowing a member to have the pastor of the day and letting the speaker approve or not approve that pastor of the day, because it's kind of a big honor if you can ask your preacher or someone from the district that you serve to come in and lead the House in prayer. And so they've been working for a year on these rules changes, and a rules package was submitted along with 100 plus signatures to call the previous question, silencing members, not allowing them to have any debate. I mean, it's a rarely used parliamentary tool, but it's usually only used after countless hours of debate and none. And it was just a really gut punch. 35 members, all Republicans, voted against calling the previous question. And then only about 25 or 26 voted against the rules package, which had in it that it banned Democrat chairs. Wow. But it also had that every single vice chair would be from the minority party. So every vice chair is going to be a Democrat. And they get a budget. So they expanded the authority of vice chairs, and those vice chairs shall, not may, they shall work with the chairman of the committee on legislation that's before the committee. So you essentially created co-chairs of committees and gave both people budgets. It is really unfortunate, but that's fine. Sometimes you lose some battles, but it just would have been nice if you had given people an opportunity to have their voice heard. That stuff
would drive me crazy. I don't know how you do that. Have the patience. I would get to a point where I would be rude to people. Like, are you freaking kidding me? Well, you got to maintain that decorum though, even through those. Wow.
Yeah, and it's really tough. And there were some people that I served with. I remember a gentleman named Lanham Line. My first session, he sat right in front of me in one seat over, and he's just like, I can't. And he's just cussing and upset. I can't believe I'm doing this. Is terrible. What are we doing? This is such a waste of time. And he served one term. He's like, nope, not for me.
I think that's
and I get it. There's quite a few people that are like that.
Michelle's got an appointment, so
we
got to
wrap up. I have some rapid fire.
Go ahead.
All
right. I didn't want to keep you from your appointment. Go ahead.
That's okay. They're just going to have to wait.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, so here's my little rapid fire. Okay, is it harder to be a politician or a husband of a politician?
Oh, gosh. It's better to be a husband. It's great, yeah. And Carrie's doing a great job. And
she can fight her own battles.
She's much more of a fighter than I am. I am much more patient than she is. And she's just more in your face. I called her like my first term and I said, I think you'd do a better job at this than me. And she kind of laughed. She's like, why do you say that? I said, because you're just more direct. And I said, there's a bunch of egos in this building that could use a dose of Carrie Isaac. I couldn't be happier that they're getting it.
That's great.
Okay, so this is the listeners want to know, when you're on a news program like Fox or Newsmax or whatever, they're interviewing you, are you wearing pants?
I'm probably wearing the same ones I'm right now. I give a lot of talks, and in my speeches, I typically wear these pants, and I tell people, you want to get rid of fossil fuels, you're going to have a lot of really upset women, and you're going to have me being very upset. I go, because you're not taking away my Lululemons. And they're made with hydrocarbons. I love my stretchy Lululemon pants. You're not taking them away from me.
Just about everything in this whole studio is made with something from the oil industry.
Yeah.
Okay, pickleball or lacrosse?
Oh, man, that's really tough. Gosh. I love playing pickleball. I love coaching lacrosse.
Oh, that's a great answer.
Okay, so best meal that you can find in the Capitol building.
Oh, wow. It's probably in my office or Carrie's office. Yeah. No, the cafeteria is good, but I did this thing when I was in office. I remember my first week in office, Representative Robert Orr, I think his last name was Orr was having a luncheon for the entire hall. There's about 60 people when you consider the members and staff, and he had gotten someone to cater in lunch, and an organization will typically sponsor that and get to know you, but it's a good way to thank the staff for all the work that they do. They work countless hours during the sessions. And I thought, wait, who sponsored this? I find out, people are willing to sponsor luncheons. And I said, where's the food from? And he's like, oh, it's just from this Mexican restaurant down the street. And I said, I have barbecue restaurants in the district I serve. I'm a marketing guy. I started this gimmicky thing called Barbecues Day. And every Tuesday during the session, we would bring in barbecue for the hall, and it would be from a different restaurant.
Wow.
And at that time, House District 45, which is Blanco Hayes, and I had Caldwell my first time. So we had Luling and Lockhart, and they loved it. I picked small businesses.
Oh, yeah.
I'll never forget Ronnie's in Johnson City when we called them and said, hey, could you deliver to the Capitol? And they're like, the Capitol?
I used to deliver when I was the marketing director of Chick-fil-A in Austin. I used to go to the Capitol all the time.
Oh, I bet you did.
The officers would let me park illegally because they knew I was coming, and I'd give them all these free Chick-fil-A coupons, and they were like, okay, you got a sandwich for me?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was always parking.
Oh, I love the parking attendants. There are these gentlemen that work in the parking garage in the Capitol. They're basically underground all day long. And when you can have them take a quick break and come up to your office and have lunch with them and sit around and have barbecue with them and the DPS officers, it was incredibly rewarding.
So that's what was I was technically bribing people. Okay, so really quick, solar or wind and energy? You just got to choose one. Got to choose one.
Oh gosh.
Okay.
Neither.
Yeah, what's the lesser?
Nuclear, natural gas, and
Okay,
coal.
there you go.
Things that are affordable and reliable. There's this big talk right now. A lot of politicians say, oh, I'm for all the above energy policy. That's the worst thing you can say because that means you're for heavily subsidized things that don't work when we need them to work. I'm for affordable and reliable. So you ask me for wind and solar, make it affordable and reliable.
Well, there you go. And now the most controversial question that I can probably ask you: dripping or Wimberley?
Oh gosh, wow. Man, you had
I can't believe you
go
asked
there.
her that. That's a hard one.
I know.
That's like, have you stopped cheating on your wife?
I know, right? I know. That's really tough. Oh, wow.
We're going to end on
so
that
which is
note.
great, though. We live in Wimberley. We worship in Dripping.
There you go.
So
the best of both worlds.
But our boys loved growing up in Dripping and going to school. Our youngest graduated from Dripping a few years ago, and now they're both in college. And I think they really appreciate it. And we still have a house in Dripping Springs. It's a rental property that we're providing affordable housing for people without subsidies, which is a great way to do it. And I think if not one, if both of our boys have eyes on that house in a few years, because they want to come back here and hopefully raise their families and settle down. And
good for them.
Yeah.
Good. Jason, it has been such an honor. I have known you for a long, long time. We have been friends, and Carrie and I. We've been friends for a long time. You were my oldest son's lacrosse coach for a little bit before he blew his knee out. But this has been such an honor to be able to sit here with you on a professional and just pick your brain.
Jason, I'd like to invite you to come back maybe in a year or so once this new administration's been in for a while and see what kind of impact you're seeing in the markets that you're in and in our economy in general.
And we got to get Carrie on. You got to work.
Definitely want to get Carrie.
Yeah, I'm going to hold her boots for ransom if she doesn't get over here.
That'd be great.
I've seen her boot closet.
Well, hopefully in a year I'll have made a few more trips to D.C. I've got some very close friends that are going to the administration. The Secretary of Energy, the Secretary of Agriculture, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development are just among some of my closest friends.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for them. A gentleman named Andy Puzder just got nominated to be the ambassador for the EU. He's a great friend. I was supposed to be at a conference with him this last weekend, but he got nominated and I guess locked down. So I'm really happy to be outside any administration, just providing wisdom and counsel and letting people know that affordable, reliable energy is the key to ending poverty.
Yep.
It's the key to human flourishing. And so I want to keep working towards that. We stand over the key to ending poverty here in the United States, and we produce that key more responsibly than anywhere else on the planet. We need to be producing more of it. And there's just a few billion people left on the planet that could benefit from that tremendously and get to experience what we get to experience and really what we take for granted.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks. Keep living the high carbon lifestyle.
Find your joy at Jovi Belterra. Life is better here. This thoughtfully designed 55-plus community is paired with resort-style amenities and social activities. They offer 1- and 2-bedroom homes located in Dripping Springs, the gateway to the Hill Country. Make friends, make memories, make time for you at Jovi Belterra. Live JoviBelterra.com, 737-387-6870.
From rodeo clowns, teachers or doctors, and everyone in between, Texans have one thing in common: hard work deserves smart banking. At Southstar Bank, whether you're buying your first home, building a dream ranch, or just managing daily finances, our 16 branches across Central Texas are here for you. Southstar Bank, trusted by professionals, backed by tradition, and built for Texas. SouthstarBank.com, member FDIC, an equal housing lender, NMLS 410624.
Nomic Power Solutions, keeping you powered up.
Get to know your local full-service Generac dealer.
Cody and Dylan with Nomic Power Solutions are a veteran-owned, Texas-based Generac dealer and installer.
Offering low monthly payment options, it's never been easier to gain independence from the grid.
Call or text 512-387-4232 or visit nomicpower.com. Follow on Instagram at Nomic Power for updates.
Turnkey service including design, plumbing, electrical, and permits.
They even offer set-it-and-forget-it maintenance plans. Nomic Power Solutions.
Protect your home. Protect your family. Stay ready.
This show is brought to you in part by the Mallet Integrity Team, serving Dripping Springs, Austin, and the surrounding areas of Central Texas since 2004. When you need the best real estate advice and service, give them a call at 512-829-2062 or email them at malletintegrityteam.com.
You know you like us, so go now to Apple Podcast or Spotify and leave us a review. Why don't ya? We love your feedback and comments. Email us at malletandmichelle@gmail.com.
Thanks for putting up with us.